make you welcome. And still in the spirit of the celebration Eid-el-Kabir, that is, I make you welcome once more to Enterprise Morning, reaching you from Enterprise Television, of course, from the economic capital of Nigeria, Lagos. I am Henry Igwebike. We'll start off today with our newspapers, and right after that will be our main conversation also for today. Please do well to be part of what we do. Have a say in what we say. You can always find and reach us at enterprisetvnews.com. You may equally like, comment, and follow us on all our social media platforms at Enterprise TV7. We're very so delighted to have with us, joining us via Zoom, is Achike Chude. He is a journalist, a public affairs analyst. Good morning to you, Mr. Chude. Hello, Mr. Chude, you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good morning.
Thank you so very much for your time, sir. Let's start off with the first daily on our desk, and this coming from the Guardian newspaper. And we have a litany of interesting stories here. Businesses leverage price adjustment to rein in FX losses and clean their books. And on the top strip, we have economy back on track, but not yet. Uhuru says Lagudu. And then, of course, June 12, Tinubu to address NAS, confers national honors on lawmakers. But our talking point for today, Mr. Chude, is Lagos politics. Of course, storm clear as Tinubu forgives Sanwo-Olu in gag brokered truth. I'd love you to speak to this matter. Of course, the skirmishes that happened is still very unclear. Nigerians are yet to understand the feud between Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his godson, Sanwo-Olu. I do not know if you have any detail that you would love to share with us before we get into if really Tinubu has forgiven him.
The issue is forgiving him for what? Because we're establishing a crime. We thought, on offense, we thought exactly. We're talking about forgiveness when the offense itself has not exactly been clear, and that is left to the realm of speculation. Obviously, a lot of things happen in politics, but one, currency that it's involved in all politics really is the issue of control, the issue of power, and of course, beneath that is the issue of control over finances, really, ultimately, because that's what politics is all about. It's about getting into power and then being able to harness or have access to resources for the purpose of either doing good or doing bad. Obviously, yes, everybody's talking about, you talked about the gag brokered peace between the president and the governor, but the question you ask yourself really is even the essence of gag in the first place. This committee of elders and prominent people in Lagos State who have this influence within the government. I'm not sure that when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was in office that you had a gag that had the kind of influence that this gag has within Lagos State. Because of course you know that Tinubu really did not share powers. He was the executive governor of Lagos and he showed it. Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Yeah, there was an interference, and then, so we wonder why the gag is in place in Lagos. Is it to keep the governor in check? Is it so that every activity of the governor can be scrutinized and decisions taken by the governor can be negotiated? So that's why it would appear again that the governor of Lagos State would seem to be weak. And then again, the issue came to the fore, especially over the snobbery. We're told, of by President Tinubu when he was around and he was shaking everybody, and then got to Sanwo-Olu and missed that handshake. Whether it was deliberate or not, he has not said anything about that. But obviously, that was the height of the disagreement, and that is the essence of even this peace meeting that you're talking about. But if you go back, you need to go back a bit, and people will talk about the attempted impeachment of Obasa, the Speaker of the House of, I believe, the Speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly, and all the intrigues that played that. And of course, some of us knew that even when the problem was at its height, that it had a very simple solution. And that is for the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who was a governor in Lagos State, to wade in. And once he wades in, because his influence is still very, very strong, extremely strong in Lagos State, only he had the capacity to bring that dispute to an end. Eventually, it was brought to an end, and I can tell you that it was brought to an end because the president wanted it to end. So obviously, the governor was in a different camp where that issue happened, and took a different position, which the president would not have been happy about. He is still the leader of the APC. That's where it is. And the APC, the Lagos State APC is an extension of the national APC. And the fact that he was governor of Lagos State at the time, and still very, very influential, he must have felt slighted that impeachment attempt of Obasa was allowed to get to the level that it got to. And a lot of people will tell you that that is where, this crisis actually started from. Apart from undercurrents before then. So it's a good thing that they have brought about reconciliation. Lagos is one of the most important states in this country. The commercial nerve center of Lagos, and one of the biggest economies in the biggest economy in West Africa, and one of the biggest economies in Africa. And then you also have the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So if peace can be brought about in Lagos State, then I think it's a very good thing, and it's good that it has come about.
Yes, very, very true. Of course, we understand the influence of godfatherism in politics in Nigeria, particularly Lagos. We've seen transition of one administration to another made possible by the same man, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And my question is, do you think Lagos would ever gain independence with respect to an administration coming without a godfather attaching and making it possible for whoever the person is? Then secondly, do you think that the same godfatherism, it could be the reason Lagos seems to be the most peaceful state in Nigeria with respect to smooth transition and the continuity in governance?
Well, the issue of independence of Lagos, I think, is not even dependent on the Godfather. Ultimately, at the end of the day, because democracy is a game of numbers, so it is going to depend on the people of Lagos State. And if the people of Lagos State do not act in ways that are contradictory to the political philosophy of those who govern Lagos State, if they accept it, then it would seem that they do not acknowledge the fact that they are not independent. So it is only they that can, if they allow the situation to continue, then it means that they are comfortable. We can assume that they are comfortable with the situation. Of course, it is only during periods of election that the people can actually speak with a very loud voice. But for them to speak with a loud voice, the process itself must be clean. The process itself must be fair. It must be transparent, so that the people can have their way. And then we know that the political process in this country, especially with regards to election, is not exactly something that people can cheer about. There is a lot of contradiction, and so at the end of the day, when an election has been fought and lost and won, it leaves a sour taste in the mouth of people that the voice that the people have not spoken, and that is not a good thing. So one way of determining, whether Nigeria is a capital state, because people talk about state capital when they are talking about Nigeria in general. One way to ensure that is that elections, are done in such a way that the people are allowed to have a say. Once the people are allowed to have a say during an election, then it becomes very difficult for you to lay claim to the fact that, or want to lay claim to the fact that the state, has been captured. So that's one. the other one, the issue of the relative peace and stability in Lagos State, I'm not going to say it is because of smooth transition between a godfather and a godson. We saw what happened in Kwara State under Lawal. The Navy commander, former military, governor, who is late now, between him and his godfather, Olusola Saraki. Eventually, I mean, in spite of, they had this crisis eventually that sought to Saraki being put out of the state. I was declared persona non grata. Then we now have, we had the one in Enugu State between the former governor, Sullivan, and his godfather, the man he succeeded, and the same thing. So the fact, and then of course the famous, the popular one, Obaseki and Adams Oshomole. So it doesn't matter sometimes that a transition can happen from a godfather to a godson. Sometimes you have disagreements between godfather and godson, and the state is embroiled in crisis. And so we cannot use that as a basis to say that Lagos is peaceful because of the relationship between godfather and godson. There are other states where you do not even have godfathers and godsons, and then they are relatively calm. When the government is in the hands of one party, and then you have another strong party in opposition, and there's relative peace. So I think it's about the level of political maturity of the political actors. That is what actually determines. The crises that we're having all over the country are crises that are man-made, whether they are security crisis, political crisis, and all that. They are man-made. They are created by man and can be resolved by man only when you have the right elements in place. Issues of when you have when the people, the actors themselves are matured politically, and when they are committed, when they are patriotic, when they are people with dignity, and people that love the nation state itself. They will all work towards making sure that there's a harmonious relationship between those that matter in key places, especially in government, that they are influential in.
All right, sir. Let's take other matters still from the Guardian newspaper, and this is an editorial as presented on the Guardian newspaper. Imperative of full disclosure in MFLS 753 Abuja duplexes, and of course, Nigerians would ask, as much as it is great to hear that there is a complete forfeiture of that duplexes, one would equally want, especially for the elite. Don't you think this particular case of Emefiele would make some Nigerian elite take monies that are not theirs out of the country rather than investing it in the country and possibly get it forfeited in the nearest future? So what do you think is the complexity, the ins and the outs that goes with this particular case?
Well, corruption is corruption. A thief is a thief. I'll put it that way. Whether you're stealing in the country and investing in the country, or you're stealing in the country and investing outside, I'm not sure that we should look for any form of justification. Though people can say, well, the man who steals internally and invests his money can provide jobs and create jobs for the people and all that, yes. But still, if the law catches up with such a person, it's not going to take, I don't think that the law, should take that position that after all, he's stealing internally and then using it to create jobs for the people. Because that job also, that theft that you have done also had negative consequences and perhaps led to the death of people, either as a result of medical infrastructure that was not in place, as a result of bad roads that people had to travel on and then died in the process because the roads were bad and so many other things. So I don't think that one should use that as an excuse. And besides, if we make the argument that once you steal internally and then the monies are seized, that it is safer to steal and then store it abroad where they cannot be seized. But that's not true. We have seen, the quantum of money that have been recovered from government officials who stored this money outside the shores of this country. The notable example is the Abacha loot. A notable example is the Desiani, money recovered from Desiani, and so many other people. So the way the international community, financial community is configured now, it's configured in such a way that there is greater collaboration and cooperation among nations. Of course, some of the anti-corruption instruments that were set up in Nigeria, like the EFCC and then the ICPC, were all instruments of international desire and will, because of the danger of money laundering. Money is falling into the wrong hands, the hands of terrorists. So that is not any money that is stolen anywhere can be recovered if the government has a political will to do that, whether the money is stolen here or stolen there. But the theft by Emefiele also tells you, gives you a vivid reason why Nigeria is where Nigeria is. That one person could do this quantum of damage to the country, and that is what you see all over the country, And I remember Ibrahim Babangida, former dictator Babangida, said that he was amazed that in spite of all of the corruption that's going on in this country, all of the burden that had been placed on the Nigerian state by kleptomaniacs and people who were trying to undermine the corruption, that he was amazed that this is many years ago, about 30 years ago, that Nigeria was still standing, Nigeria had not collapsed. So that tells you what can be done if all of these monies really cannot be utilized for proper, can be invested properly in this country. The country, I'm not sure, will be where it is right now.
Very, very true, because if one would, it's so very unfortunate that we still do not have a comprehensive data to say how much of loot has been taken out of this country, and if that should be converted to providing infrastructure and any other thing, I think it will go a very long way in taking Nigeria from the.
But then, my brother, yeah, you're right. But then that is a challenge for all of us, especially us in the media. Yes. It is a challenge, maybe because don't forget the role of the media is to hold the leaders, political leaders, and the elites, to hold them accountable for what they do in the public space with public money, and so they are not going to do this accountability if they are guilty, if they are the ones that are putting, that are busy looting the treasury of the state and they're frittering our monies away, putting them in foreign accounts. They will not do that. They will not deliberately go out of their way to expose themselves. It is now the responsibility of the media, that it's also whose activity, whose activity. I mean, as an organization that is supposed to hold leaders accountable, is enshrined in the constitution of this country. It's only the profession that has a mention in the constitution of this country. That shows you the importance of the media, if their role is given due recognition by the constitution. So I guess that if we don't have enough information about what is going on, about the consequences of some of the corruption that is going on and all of that, it is simply because the media still needs to do much more than it is doing now.
Very, very true. Very so true. But let's go to the Daily Trust newspaper just before we call it a day on this particular segment. We have the big story here, 2027 division in Tinubu's base. I think you need to get the copy or to read that. It's a comprehensive story on what it seems to be a division in the base. But let's take a look at our talking point for today. ACF to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu prioritize governance over election. Mr. Chude, you would agree with me, it's actually very so laughable that we are still in 2025 with less than 2 years to go in the first term of Bola Tinubu's administration, and he is and his team are already talking about 2027. We're not talking about Human Development Index. We're not talking about the economy. We're not talking about bringing back the middle class to what it should be, and we're talking about 2027. Don't you think it is the federal government under the administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu losing focus and prioritizing its attention on the wrong part?
Then we should call Jonathan Goodluck Ebele, a prophet, because this was exactly what he said about the nature of politics, especially in Nigeria. If you remember that debate, I mean, when he brought up that issue of a 6-year single-term presidency, it was because of this situation. And he was so right. He hit the nail on the head when he said that The only time the government is going to concentrate on governance is 2 years after it comes to power. Then from the second year, the government starts, the politicians start preparing for a second term. And that it is better for just have one single tenure of 6 years. Remove the extra 2 years for the second term, so that a man, when a president, somebody becomes president, he is there for just 6 years. He knows that after 6 years, he leaves. Therefore, he will spend his time, not taking a second term, but trying to leave a legacy. And he was right, because I know that sometime, late last year or so, it became another issue in the country when they decided to debate it. Members of National Assembly, eventually they threw it away. But Jonathan was obviously a prophet when he made that statement. And, politicians are always the politicians, especially in our time. Their politics is more important than the economy. You should know that. In countries that have advanced, democratically, the economy has a way of determining the fate of politicians. But in Nigeria, it is the politics that determines the fate of politicians. And it's not just, you are talking about 2 years to go. When I was in Abuja, I came into Abuja about last year, sometime before the middle of last year. I was already seeing posters for 2027. Yes. So that's about a year into the administration. We're already seeing it. Because politicians and their acolytes will always do what they do best. The nation state is the list of the priorities of the political class. Hard to say, because they are there as guardians, and they are there, or they are supposed to be there as guardians of our constitution and as guardians of the people, to provide for those things, to ensure those things that have been, specified by the constitution, that the primary role and responsibility of government is the welfare and the security of the people. But the politics is more important. Don't forget that all this agitation for 2027 is happening against the backdrop of the constant killings of Nigerians in many states, in some states in the country, where you could even make the argument that perhaps the Nigerian state has lost control of some of the territories under its control. We see what happens in Zamfara, Benue, Plateau, at will. Hundreds of people are killed at will. In any country that this continues to happen, consistently, you begin to question, the legitimacy of a government that says that it is in charge, because these are things that try the credibility, of a government. A government has power, is giving power, to act on behalf of the people, to keep the people and their communities safe. But we've not had that level of safety for a very long time, not under this government, not under the previous governments and other governments in the country.
But so if I might ask,
if care is not taken,
yes, if I might ask, I know this might be, putting you on the hot seat. Are you disappointed with Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration? That's number one. Number two, do you think he truly cares about legacy?
No, it's not for me to say whether I'm disappointed in his government or not. I see efforts. We cannot deny that. I see efforts, and with every government, even good or bad governments, you always see efforts. It's not as if he sleeps every day and his government officials and ministers are sleeping every day. You hear them turning out policies, whether at the economic level, whether through the CBN and all that, trying to define and redefine policies. We see the intervention that they have made in the areas of palliatives. Whether the palliatives have been effective or not is a different ball game. But what I'm saying is that we are seeing motion, or movement. But sometimes you can talk about movement without motion. You see things happening, and yet you are not seeing the effect of those things on the people. We know what happened when the government came into power. The price of petroleum products, especially petrol and diesel, how it was jacked up, and then every other crisis in the country at the economic level began, and then inflation, the poverty in the country, and so many other things, consequences of that. And so the government has been grappling with all of those things. But there's no way anybody, seeing what is going on today, the poverty in the land, the inflation, and the fact that people are no longer meeting up, healthcare, is not, nothing meaningful or significant has been done to the state of healthcare in the country. Education is still not in a good state, regardless of the loan that is being disbursed, which is also subject to, probe, because a lot of it is being stolen and all that. Then the issue of corruption, and not much has happened, on that path. So you could say that the government has been making efforts. They've been saying the right things about how they want to turn the country around and all that. But what we know is that the people are still mired in poverty. What we know is that the greater number of Nigerians, are suffering all manners of debilitating economic conditions, and that the World Bank has told us that it is going to get worse in the coming years. So what you ask yourself is, how do you determine the effectiveness of a government? It is down to the standard of living of the people. When the standard of the living of the people has improved drastically, because government is about the people, and their lives are much better and they are happier, then you can say that government is beginning to get it right. But I don't see that happening in terms of the benefit of governance to the people. People are still finding it very, very, very difficult. But government says, well, it's a matter of time. So we see.
All right, let's just believe and hope that things will turn around. It's been stated by that the economy is back on track, but not yet Uhuru. I do not know if Nigerians understand what that is, and because what they care much about is there food on the table? Can children go to school? Can they go to hospitals, public ones, and get the needed health care that they need? Can the middle class return back as shock absorbers and do the job that it is meant to do? All of these are what Nigerians are looking out for, of course, and hoping that things will turn around. And just to let you know, ladies and gentlemen, that Mr. Achike Chude would be here to take us on our main conversation. That is when we return. Nigerians slash foreign flight spending by 30% amid the Naira crash, inflation surge. That in the beat is still Enterprise Morning. Please. very much for being back. And if you just joined us, you're still on to Enterprise Morning, reaching you from Enterprise Television. Let's get talking on our main conversation for today. Nigerians have cut their spending on foreign air travel by 30% over 2 years, dropping to $2.66 billion in 2024. This decline is largely due to the sharp depreciation of the naira, which fell from 450 naira to 1,553 per the dollar between 2023 and 2024, alongside soaring inflation that reached 34.8%. These economic pressure have made international travel less affordable for many. Other factors contributing to the decline include stricter immigration policies in developed countries and the removal of Nigeria from some visa on arrival and e-visa programs, reducing the number of Nigerians traveling abroad. Additionally, foreign airlines now price tickets in US dollars, driving up cost amid challenges in repatriating funds. Data from the Central Bank of Nigeria shows that spending on foreign air travel fell 18% in 2023 and another 14% in 2024. This contrasts sharply with the rapid growth seen between 2020 and 2022, when spending surged by 255%, reflecting a significant shift in travel behavior driven by worsening economic condition. I still have with me Achike Chuda. Thank you so very much, sir, for being around.
Thank you.
All right. So let's get talking on this. My first question on this matter: should Nigerians celebrate, or is this a cause for concern? What exactly should be the emotion right now when Nigerians cannot travel, but at the same time it is making it possible for the same Nigerians to save money? Which should we go for?
It's I think you find advantages in both attractions and disadvantages too. Nigerians are not able to travel, not because they do not want to travel, and don't forget that it's not just about traveling for holidays or for relaxation. It's also about Nigerians, their children, the children of the elites that are being sent to school abroad, which is what has been happening all this while. And then the fact that they no longer are able to come up with the right amount of foreign exchange to be able to make that possible. So some of them have to make do with keeping their words, at home, and then looking for places where they think, well, they can just manage. And so that's why I use the word manage. Of course, the popular Nigerian parlance that the first choice is not happening, and that is to send them abroad because of some of the reasons that you have talked about. So they are keeping them here reluctantly, and then so this essentially is exactly what is happening. It would have been a good thing, really, if the authorities at all levels of governance in this country will begin to ask themselves questions about why Nigerians keep on running away from this country. In some instances, selling their properties and permanently uprooting themselves from their country, from the country of their birth, and going to contribute meaningfully economically to the fortunes of their new host countries. So it is not it's not a thing that we should say hooray. The hooray, look, a better situation would have arisen if somehow we had the negative situation in this country had been improved upon, and Nigerians, as a matter of choice, no longer have any need to travel abroad, but would would remain in Nigeria and to ply their trade and do whatever it is that they do for their well-being and their sustenance. So it's not something that we should celebrate, because what it means is that if there is an improvement, for instance, in the foreign exchange, these people will once more have the means to send their children abroad or to travel abroad for whatever reasons. So it's not something that I think we should sing hooray about.
Very, very true. But Nigerians, at one point in their lives, especially from 2021 to 2023, it was the opposite of the case. We had children from less wealthy homes, traveling out of the country for education. with the Japa thing, of course, coined by Nigeria, it made it easier for, especially after the COVID-19 and Brexit, it made it easier for the nobody to travel out of the country, as opposed to what we used to see before, where it was predominantly meant for the elite. But of now, it has turned back to what it used to be, with Nigeria and the naira selling at 1,500 naira to the dollar. We have reversed back to the old days where it's only meant for the elite. But I'd love you to speak to the effect of some of these things to our institutions here. We still do not have a robust institution to keep us here. At the same time, the brain drain is equally an issue. So how do we make sense of all of these things, really?
Well, there's a negative outcome to governance in Nigeria. So it's the result that you're seeing. The economy is not doing well. In fact, people have often said that every succeeding year seems to be worse than the preceding year in this country. So what it means is that if 2024 is bad, you wait for 2025, and then you be also, reminisce about the good times, a few good times that we had in 2024. The implication 2025 is worse. This is what we have been seeing since the advent of democracy from 1999 to date. That it would appear that the previous administration or the previous year seems to be better than the succeeding year. So that means that there's a decline in governance. And I think that is exactly what we are seeing. Of course, it's affecting people and it's affecting us in so many ways. We must not forget. I was just telling somebody the other day that there were reports, and that the reports were true, that at a time in the history of this country, that members of the Saudi royal family were coming for medical treatment at the University Teaching Hospital in Ibadan. And then we had all manners of foreigners coming into our institutions, our public educational institutions, even the healthcare institutions, to either practice as doctors or nurses or as lecturers in our universities and higher institutions, even in secondary schools. At least when I went to secondary school, I still saw some foreigners who were teaching. In the university system, it was the same thing. There were European lecturers and the rest. That gave you an idea of the state of the Nigerian economy, that those people could leave their country and come to Nigeria and earn meaningfully. But they began to disappear when the economy of this country, began to go bad. And then, of course, inflation hit in subtly in a small manner, and then misgovernance and all.
Are you still with us? Okay, I think we're having a little bit of network glitch there. But we still have Achike Chude, and we're talking about the Nigerians decrying that traveling out of the country is becoming very Herculean now because of the devaluation of the naira and things not working the way it should be. It's very so unfortunate, but of course, let's count our gains and see if in any way it is of benefit to Nigeria, or Nigerians are actually losing as a result of not traveling out of the country and gaining a lot from other countries around the world. It's still Enterprise Morning. Okay, I think it's back now. You're back, sir?
Yes, the usual perennial discussion to pass of plan.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Yes,
yeah.
Very true. Okay, fine. Yeah, so you were saying something.
Yeah, so Nigeria is not what it used to be before. We've had the best of this country. And then, of course, the challenge for the political leaders is what to do to reverse this situation. And there's something I tell people about whether people are traveling. The implications, there's a social implication for all these trips that they're doing. Families are being broken down. And, it's perhaps also another job for the media to also look at it, again. Families are losing the cohesion that is needed, between members of a family. Because some people who have the means, as when children are even as young as 10, 11, 12, they are sending them abroad to go and study. And so you find a lot of houses in this country, from Abuja to Lagos to other state capitals, the GRAs where you have the rich, where they are staying. You find out that as big as those houses are, a lot of these houses are empty. They are empty because the residents, are no longer there anymore. So what you have is just the man that just stays around. Because sometimes when he has to send the children, when the children have to be sent abroad and they are so young, the mother follows suit to also keep an eye on them. Yeah. Of course, the issue of values in Europe and some of these other places. So you need to keep, an eye on your children. And so what does that do to the family? That bond that is needed, that guides a family, that strengthens a family, is broken at a very, early age. And there are consequences for the society, because we've all been told right from the time we're in primary and secondary school that the basic unit of society is the family. Once you break down the family, you break down the society. What we are seeing again, is the breaking down of the Nigerian society as a result of the consequences of people just wanting to go out of the country. So it's good that they are spending less, and that means that those children who would have been sent out much earlier might end up being sent out maybe when they're about 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 years. So they will now do the secondary school here. Obviously, it is said that the secondary school education in Nigeria is much better than when it comes to tertiary education, because you still have some private schools that are doing fairly well. And so they can now, when they now have that choice, they have to make that choice. They say, okay, well, let's sacrifice their secondary school, let them do their secondary school here, and then hopefully we have the means to send them abroad, to go to universities abroad and to remain there. Because what happens is that, after schooling, those children there is no basis. The question, any reason why they have to come back to Nigeria, because the question they ask is what is left in this country for us to come back to. But again, just like you also indicated, I think, in your opener, Europe is changing, drastically. Immigration has become a very key issue. So it's not just that the inflation has eaten deep into the pockets of Nigerians, making them, putting them in a position not to travel the way they used to, as they would have wanted to. But immigration policies by these other countries are also, hitting hard against people from different other countries who want to go to those places. It's now much more difficult for them too. So I think that has also contributed.
Very, very true. But let's take a look at the side effects of some of these things. Every government practices protectionism. We have seen it in America. Donald J. Trump is using his tariff to keep away people not coming into America and protecting the assets in America for America. In Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu had to devaluate our naira so we can spend more within the country than taking it out of the country. We have data that has said that in Ghana, in 2024 alone, Nigerians studying in Ghana spent $1 billion on tuition fees. So do you think the idea of protectionism is good for an economy, restricting its people to their country rather than opening up the doors and the windows for their citizens to go explore the world and possibly bring back the advantages of what they have gained?
It depends on the status of that country. What America can to a very large extent can practice a large amount of protectionism, if I use that expression, because it is the biggest economy in the world, because America is doing well on so many fronts. And so they can afford a few of this, they can afford to call the bluff of some countries. And you can see that when Trump came up with this tariff, and there was a lot of consternation in other parts of the world, China, Canada, Mexico, Europe, and all that. But they all fell in line because they felt that they had more to gain, they had more to lose than to gain if they act contrary to what America wanted. And so they began to negotiate with the United States. And many of them came to the drawing table, to the table, to discuss terms, favorable terms to America. Same thing with China. China, has also, discussing favorable terms with America, because Trump had always argued that they were the ones operating a trade deficits in their relationship, economic engagements with other nations. And so you can see them gaining from that. So a country like Nigeria, what protectionism are you going to embark on? You don't have the means, you don't have the wherewithal. The country is mired in debt. Of course, the U.S. is mired in debt about 34 trillion too, which is big. But they are the ones printing the dollar. It is the dollar that is, in circulation all over the world. So not so with Nigeria. So what are you going to bluff with? We practically have nothing. When you almost everything that we see in this country, you go to the supermarkets, you go to the shops and so on, virtually everything is imported into the country, putting a very heavy strain on the country's, scarce foreign exchange, resources. So these are some of the issues. So protectionism can only make sense if it is something that is well thought out, depending again on what you want to protect. And also looking at the bigger picture too. When it is necessary to practice protectionism, you must do that to protect your home industry. But it also comes with a caveat. There is a limit to the level of protectionism that you want to play, that you want to do your carry out in your country. Otherwise you end up even stifling your economy much more, especially when you know that a lot of the things that you're producing, that you're consuming, is imported from abroad. If you're consuming economy, a consumption economy, it becomes easier to do some of those things because you are consuming and then you're also exporting, and that puts you in a better position. But not when it's consuming, you has to come in from abroad. Then you cannot make too much impact.
Yes, very, very true. You would, of course, agree with me that most recently the federal government under President Tinubu has cancelled every foreign scholarship of Nigerians to different parts of the world. I do not know what you think about it, if it is a gain or it is a loss. But let's compare this, if possible, juxtapose it to China. In 1979, Mao Zedong, of course, the president at that time, opened up China. And what it did, according to research, is it sent lots of industrial esponnages to different parts of the world, especially the United States. They went there, learned everything they were supposed to learn, brought it back to China, and today China is like the hub of everything in the world, especially production. So don't you think it's okay for us to equally explore that route in possibly equipping our country, send our children to different parts of the world to learn what is happening and possibly bring it back?
Well, the Chairman Mao started what we call the Cultural Revolution. Of course, it had its downsides too, in terms of the people that were killed in the process. But then after that, I think Deng Xiaoping took over. And then there was this deliberate policy, what you're also talking about what they needed to do to make China a great country. China was very backward. China was poverty-stricken. Yeah. But miraculously, a succession of political leadership that had that had China in mind, worked assiduously to ensure the growth of China, especially along the path of industrialization. That is why people are saying that China became the industrial hub of the world, and that has been the bane of the economy of Europe and even America. There are certain basic things, and that we discovered during COVID, when even surgical equipment, masks, and so on, were not being produced in Europe and America. They had to depend on China to import those things. So, and that's part of the reason Trump is doing what he's trying to do, to see whether there could be a reversal of that situation, so that a lot of these things can now be produced in the United States. Of course, it's going to be tough, and in Europe too. But don't forget that China's success would not have been made possible without the influence and the role and the partnership of the United States. Because now you're talking about geopolitics. The Americans wanted to keep the Russians in check. If you notice, China's ideological fixation and that of the Soviet Union is similar. It's socialism. Though they have different definitions of socialism. But so you think that they would have been the closest of friends, and then work together to undermine the United States. But China, instead, to a very large extent, chose America, especially when Nixon went to China and then helped to open up to create the environment, the global environment under which China was able to open up. And then also America also did their best to get China into the World Trade Organization. China was not a member of the World Trade Organization. So China also came in there with American help. And I agree with you that at the time China had to send people to other parts of the world to learn, and they came back to China, and they were, manufacturing fake products everywhere. But you see, the thing about manufacturing fake products is that you have the basic elements of manufacturing of those things in place. And so what you can only do is to improve with time, on the prototype. And this is what they have done. And then today China has become, great success. We have Nigerians who have gone, to all of, in fact, you cannot talk about the development of many of the countries in the world, in the healthcare sector, in engineering, in ICT, without talking about the activities of Nigerians. Even in NASA, we have had Nigerians also play a role in those places. So why are those people not coming back to also do what the Chinese did?
Exactly.
It is simply because of the political leadership and the direction of the political elites in this country. The political elites have not shown any great capacity, to want to do well for this country. They have not shown any serious intention, honest intentions, to want to make things better in Nigeria. And so, and in fairness to some of these Nigerians in diaspora, many of them have come back, into this country to also contribute, because look, they say there is no place like home, and that is the truth. No matter how well you contribute in those places, there will always be circumstances where you'll be reminded that this is not your place, this is not your country. And so a lot of them came back under various governments, and then a few years later, or a few months later, they all ran back to where they are coming from, because the place is completely dysfunctional. You have, for those who want to do things for this country, they get disappointed when they confront government officials that they realize are not interested in that, they're not even on the same page. Rather, those government officials would frustrate them. And so these are the things we have done. So it's not for lack of trying. A lot of elites abroad have come back to this country to try to also play their part to make their country great. But they were never really given that opportunity. They were frustrated, and then they went back to where they came from. What it tells you is that when Nigeria is not yet ready to receive these people.
Very, very true. And it's widespread, especially with the political class. The intentionality of doing things right is not there. Just last week or 2 weeks back, Uganda launched its national carrier, Uganda Air, and a very small economy if compared to that of Nigeria. But don't you think it's really despicable that Nigeria, after so many years, the last time I flew Nigerian Air was in 2003. And right up until today, we still do not have a national carrier. Don't you think all of this would have exacerbated the problem of travel costs for Nigerians outside of the country?
When you say the last time you flew Nigeria Air was 2003, what Nigeria airline did you fly? Was it the one that of Virgin Atlantic that was given to Nigeria and we put our flag on it? I want to believe so.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't. I think Nigerian Airways collapsed before then, unless you're talking of Nigeria Airways.
Yes, Nigerian Airways. Yes, that's what, because I can still remember Nigerian Airways in 2003.
Okay.
Yes, from Kano to Lagos.
That is good. It's good to know that. Okay, they were still flying by then. Well, Uganda is a very, very small country, and but you have seen now. I mean, in the past, under the Buhari administration, now we played with this desire for a Nigerian, air. And then we saw that with under Haji Rikas, the former Minister of Aviation, they brought in a Nigerian airplane, that they painted in Nigerian colors. And then after the ceremony, they flew it back to where it came from, removed the paint and all that. That itself has been started in controversy. So I don't think anybody is talking about Nigeria Air today. Of course, it's a matter of prestige. It's a matter of national. It's a symbol of the strength of a nation to have a national carrier. So it's also one of the most important diplomatic moves a nation state can make. But unfortunately, we have lost that. And that it's part of the reason why when people describe Nigeria as the giant of Africa, it's a bit laughable. A giant of Africa cannot be wallowing in the kind of myriads, of socio-economic, political issues that we're having. We need to get our acts right. Even if we come up with a Nigeria Air, it will just be window dressing. Let us go after the fundamental issues plaguing the country, resolve those contradictions, and then you can now get to that level where you can actually float an airline and ensure that airline is maintained. You can see what Ethiopia Air has been able to do. Kenyan Air, I think they are about the best in the continent. Kenyan Air, Rwanda. Then Ethiopia is the symbol of the Ethiopian Airlines is a symbol of Europe, Ethiopian strength. And their country is a thing of pride for them, because I think it is their greatest export, Ethiopian airline. That's why if you go there and you see the way it is being run seamlessly, you realize that even regardless of the governments that are coming to Ethiopia, they do not interfere so much with that airline, because it has done more diplomacy than any other institution in Ethiopia has done for that country.
Very, very true. We can't overstate some of these facts, because all of these little things, as much as they are minute in nature, they add to the opportunity of other people looking at us and valuing us as much as we would love to. Thank you so very much, Achike, for being here. We truly do appreciate your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, sir. All right, that's just about the time we have for show today. We'd love to say thank you to you. Please do well to follow us if you may. You can always read up on everything we've discussed today when you visit us at enterprisetvnews.com. You may equally comment and follow us on all our social media platforms.